tell you, wow, with that, you get bars set so you want to be able to live up to those bars. It's fantastic, it's wonderful to be here in the city of brotherly love, in the city of Philadelphia again, to be with so many friends in the presence of Dr. Lewis Gordon, Jane Gordon, to see so many folks that I have worked with in the city of Philadelphia for a very long time. And to be here to have an opportunity to share in this memory of my friend. And as a person of African descent, I can tell you that I don't have many friends that don't look like me. Gary Tobin was my friend. My God, Mike, was that you? Classmate from Spurs. Not many people seek you out and say, I want you to come to my home to break bread with me. Not many people seek you out, come to your home, knock on your door, and say, I want to get to know you because I can learn from you and we can share together. This was Gary Tobin. Brutally honest. And that honesty was so immeasurably helpful. And then I had to step back and ask myself, I'm actually friends with a Republican. Besides Earl and Deborah Bourne, they're Republicans too, and Andre. And I had to really think about that. How could I be friends with this staunch Republican who was such a nice guy? So that taught me that you just cannot judge people by their political labels, because it really doesn't tell us where they are politically, may not be where they are in social context and in social thinking. And so he said, we need to be working together. And I asked the question, why? Why did you come to me? He said, because I think that you're going to have a voice in the years to come. Little did I know, for a guy who didn't do much in religious school, that he was also prophetic. Who didn't go to synagogue that often, but who was able to see, and to see with a different eye than the ordinary eye is. This was Gary Tobin. And so I'm here today and could be no other place. And Lewis, I thank you for the invitation, because he was my friend. And it was so fitting that last week I was at the first religious synagogue that I taught at many years ago. And I was speaking, and I told the rabbi who's retired there now, I said, you know, you were the first rabbi to invite me to speak in your bima about 22, 23 years ago. I said, and your synagogue was the first synagogue to reach out to me and ask me to teach in the religious school. And I really enjoyed 6th grade much more than 8th grade. There's something that happens to children between 6th grade, Sunday morning, 9 o'clock, you can control them. 8th graders, they control you. And what made it even more interesting is I had some kids in 6th grade who had totally morphed by the time that they got to 8th grade into something very different. But one thing I can say about those kids that I taught over the 7 years that I worked in religious school on Sunday morning, being a place for kids where children did not want to be, is every Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur or holiday, a group of my kids who I taught 20-some years ago will get together and come and visit their rabbi and daven with me for services. And that warms my heart more than anything else. Because after chasing those kids around, grabbing them, putting them down in the chair, laying the Bible before them, and the kid jumps up again and shoots out. So if you ever went to Jewish Sunday school on Sunday morning, you know what I'm talking about. And when you did not want to be at that place. And I won't ask you to identify yourselves. Rabbi Caldwell spoke about 50 years later, after things had been signed. President Johnson signed an act that said certain things were outlawed. And indeed, on a federal level, they were outlawed. But in 1966, the end of 66, the beginning of 1967, I traveled to South Carolina to attend high school, to finish my high school education. And getting there, I had to go to the doctor, so my aunt was taking me to the doctor's office, and as we made our way to the doctor's office, I just was going in the door, and my aunt said, "Stop." 1967, Georgetown, South Carolina. That door said, "Whites only." After President Johnson had signed this noble act, and the other door said, "Colored." In 1967, I was on my way to the movie theater, and coming from Chicago, I wanted to see the show. So I went in and I gave my $1.75 and headed in the door, and the woman said, "Stop. Negroes do not sit on the main floor here. You have to sit in the balcony." This was 1967. I relate that to you because I was in Boston a few weeks ago addressing the Massachusetts Board of Rabbis. And then I went to Ghan Academy, a very large Jewish high school. And this young student in the 11th grade stood up. He says, "Rabbi, are you an African-American Jew? Or are you a Jew that's an African-American?" I said, "That's a relative question." And I gave him those two stories. And then I gave him this last story. I said, "Have you ever had this happen where you had to go into the doctor's office? Have you ever had this all happen where you had to go to the balcony and could not go on the main floor? And if you did, you would have the police called on you. Or have you ever been stopped by the police for a busted taillight and 4 police cars come in on you from north, south, east, and west, and all of them have shotguns because you have a busted taillight?" So I asked the young man, it's a relative point. I am an African American, I am a Jew. And within the context of my being, they merge together. But let me ask you, as a young Jewish boy, what experience have you gone through that makes you who you are? And exactly, who are you? He said, "Gee, I don't know right now." So he's still thinking. But I'm here, and I want to share because everything that I've heard has been so wonderful, so fantastic about Heschel. I have a lecture that I do on Heschel and King and their relationship and how Rabbi Heschel sought to work with Dr. King. But there's one thing that I want to kind of start this out with that I think Heschel and King would have both agreed to. As a matter of fact, Dr. King stated this, and he got it from a young man who was the son of Mahatma Gandhi. And he traveled around with this saying from his father. Gandhi stated that modern man has 7 sins. Modern man wants wealth without work. Modern man wants pleasure without conscience, knowledge without character,